Hello and welcome to the sixth part of this video series of top-down programming logic with PHP. My name is David Thorne from Thorne Web Design. As I said before in the fifth part, if you haven't watched the introduction and all the other videos up to here, it's not really going to mean a lot. So I would suggest going back to the beginning and watching them. Okay, so where have we come from, and where did we last get to? We've got a team of developers. Now, these developers haven't really worked with each other before. Okay, give it some background. These developers haven't really worked with each other before. They all sat down in the beginning, and then the boss then delegated different tasks or different areas to each developer of what their one topic should be and what part or their role should play in building this website using top-down programming logic. Now we're on about 2.5 hours work at the moment on day number 2 as such. Day number 1 they worked out who's doing what and what's going to be and so on, and prior to that all the designers and so on, they designed everything. So we're now into a stage of everyone's still trying to work out how things should be done, and after one of the first meetings, everyone agreed upon that an interface should be created first of all before any classes are actually created, and that both sides of the party are happy with the contract, as in the interface of what they're getting and what they've got to do. Okay, now we built then the login interface, which was a bit back to front, okay, but we managed to iron out the problems on there. Then we built the login class, and then we've worked out that we need data from the database. Now we don't have anything to do with the database, so we need to pass it over to the database programmer. But first of all, we had a discussion with the database programmer to say, well, why don't you, the database programmer, write the interface first? The database programmer says, well, I don't know what you need first. You write down the first parts of the interface of what you need, and then I'll check it out, and then we'll have another discussion again if I need to add anything to it, and then I'll implement the actual login model class. Okay, so everyone says fair enough. So there's another little discussion. I took over then the login model interface over to the database programmer and then the boss as well, and said these are the things which I need. Right? The database programmer said, well, wait a minute, we've only been on this for a short amount of time. I'm still writing some other methods and some other classes and stuff like that to do other things. I haven't fully got the databases all up and running yet. So they said, well, why don't we just make a test user? Okay, and they turned around and said, fine. Then the test user information is going to be as follows. Okay, the username is going to be equal to test1, and the password is going to be equal to password1. All right, everyone's happy. So the people who are actually doing the website as such, when they test it, they're going to be using test1 and they're going to be using password1. And that's the guy who's doing the database programming, the interface and the login model. He needs to be checking that he needs to have a user of test1 and password1. And if this information is wrong, then they need to give back the relevant error and so on. So everyone's singing off the same song sheet now. Is that a username of test1 and password1 should be used, and once then the database programmer has got databases active, this, that and the other active, then it will progress a little bit further. But for the time being, so everything else works, is that they all know that a test1 username and password1 is there. Okay, remember, it's abstracting, it's not caring about the small things. So they go, right, fine, we know that test1 and password1 is there. The other discussion was, well, when I load all this information, as in when I've got my login class that's got the login model, yeah, how do I know where the login model is? You know, it might move from place to place. I don't want to have to care about this. I want to write my code, and I want to know that it just loads it. So it was agreed upon that when the main core file is loaded in the beginning, that a class, a static class of factory, would be loaded, and any object instantiation that you want to do should be registered with the factory. Okay, so they all agreed upon this, and they all agreed upon that in the core folder there would be a class called factory, and this would be a static class, which means that you never instantiate this one class. So they all agreed upon that factory would be always be loaded first, okay, and that whenever you wanted to instantiate someone else's class, then you go and register it with factory first of all. Everyone went, well, that seems really, really logical. Okay, so they then said, well, the database programmer and then myself said, well, wait a minute, I need to know that there's a login model that I can have. Okay, so they said, right, fine, then we'll call it get login model. All right, and that's it, and function obviously here as well. Let's clean this up. Okay, and the static function of get login model would return a type of login model. Yeah, and the description of this is then get login model loads the relevant files required to return a login model object. That's it. So you know that this loads all relevant files, and you can call this without worrying about where the files are, okay, and anything like that. So you don't need to care. You just need to know. You need to know that the factory is loaded, and that you can call factory get login model, and that it will load all the other files, and you don't need to worry about any of this. Okay. Now, they also decided that all interfaces would be located in the same place. Okay, and that they would then have a prefix, or they would have a name structure. So they all said, okay, fine, then all interfaces go in one folder, and that they would be named as follows. So they need a login interface first of all, and this would then be interface. There's going to be a dot in between it, but I need to do this first and then change how it is. Okay, login dot interface dot PHP. So they would all be named with the name of the class dot interface dot PHP, and that one of the functions on this is then load interface and interface name. Okay, and this would then load any interface which was required. So type of this parameter is then string, loads the interface file. It means that no one needs to care about where the interfaces are. The developer of the factory is the one that needs to care about where the files are. Okay, and the contract says that this should return Boolean based upon it loading it. Okay, so and the parameter of interface name should only only consist of the name and not the file name. Therefore, if the interface is called login interface, then the file will be login.interface.php. The parameter should then only be login. Okay? That's as simple as that. So we're only ever taking the first bit. There should be no spaces in a class name anyway. There should be no dashes. There's different rules about it. So that's what we're going to have, and it's all lowercase altogether. So everyone says, "Oh, that's fantastic." So we know that we've got the factory is being loaded first, and that it's going to load all of these relevant things. Okay, so we're not going to, and we're going to return true for the time being, and this is going to return new login model. All right. Now they also said, well, all models would be located in one place as well. Okay, so we'll save this, and our login model that we had is, or we'll move we'll just close some of these down. iLogin as well. So we've got iLogin and iModel need to move into interfaces, and we can then delete this one. We'll delete this one because we don't need it, and we'll rename this. So it's called login.interface, and this one's called login model.interface. Okay, nice and simple. So we've got login.interface.php and we've got login model.interface.php. So we've got both interfaces there. Now the models are going to have the same form. So we've got login.model.php. And is that named correctly? Looks like it. Yes, it is. Okay, so all models will be named by their model name .model.php. Okay, so we know that this one is going to be class login model, and this one implements the login model interface. This is where the this is the file that then needs to be adjusted. Now we haven't finished the discussions about what the login model interface should be. Okay, we're just at a point of rejigging the file structure so everyone is completely cohesion with what they're going to do. Now on the other hand, we need to know that we've got another factory method that loads the model file, and we change this. You can see the name, not the file. Therefore, the model is called. Change that. It's called login model, and then this will be login model. The parameter should then only be login, and this is then model name, and this can go there, and load model. Okay, so that's essentially going to be loading these things. Now for the time being, because we're not actually doing any testing phase, we don't need to worry about this. So that's it. And for example, get login model, this then needs to load model name, and it's login. Okay, that's the most that we need to care about. okay, is because this is loading it, and if not, then throw new exception. Okay, could not load login model. That's it, and then return. That's as much as we need to care about for here. So is it going to load the login model? So it means now that the person who's doing the class here needs to know that they've got the interface and so on loaded already. Okay, now which means that effectively, to know that we're loading the login public static function load login. Okay, what the name of this really should be load objects. Object name. No, we want it specific. We want it specific to the login. So we're going to say login get login instance. Okay, because this is specific to this. So we need to know first of all that we've got factory load interface, and we do login. Yeah, the model is going to implement that. Load interface, and then factory load model login, and effectively get login model and then you know you've got login equals new login, and the login class is there. So we know that the interface has been loaded, okay, and we know that the login model has been loaded. That's the whole point of this, is that as long as we do get login instance, then we know interface loaded, model loaded, and then finally we obviously need to do loading the object itself as well, which we're going to ignore for the time being. Okay, so this would then be that there. So these are just little things that as we're going along, we're slowly cleaning up where the files are and how the files are supposed to be. Okay. Right, that's final thing about clean up before we start actually implement, or we start going through this. We don't need to care about the model at the moment. The interfaces are what we've been working on. This is of no relevance. This logic at the moment is of no relevance, and class login, this actually this one here that we did have in the beginning can be deleted, because this login class is the one that we care about. Okay, and that's there is the one that would get loaded, whatever, but we're going to ignore that one for the time being. Okay, so factory login and now we are login interface. Alright, you have to remember that we're discussing with the other programmer this login model interface. So we know that when first, let's scroll back slightly. When the code loads the login instance, yeah, that in the background the login model interface has been loaded, the login interface has been loaded, and then the login object gets loaded as well. So we don't, whilst we're programming this, we don't need to worry about having these things loaded. Alright? Drink some of my tea. So we're now got the hat on of then the database programmer. He says, right, wait a minute, we've worked out now that we've got test user information, which is fine. So I don't have to worry about whether there actually is a database. We're going, yep, set user. Now that's good. I like that. Get user, username, blah blah blah. Okay, so within this one, that's essentially where I'm going to have to then load the user itself, and that's going to return a standard class. Okay, so that's fine. Yeah, I can understand that bit. Is user verifies that the loader user is actually active, and a call to get user can be made. Yeah, well, that's fine. I like that. Update last login. Right. Well, I've got to do a method for that. Yeah, that's fine. Get error has errors. Yeah. He's thinking, well, I've got to forward think about this. What's he going to ask me next? The login is only going to have to log in itself. So it's just got to test whether there's anything got to be. Is there any, he's asking questions to himself. Is there anything else that I've got to think about that he's going to come back to me at a later stage and ask me to amend? Because I'd rather just concentrate on doing it now, doing it fully, but still being top down and not worrying about all of the small details as such. But if I spend 5 minutes now thinking about it, I don't think the login model interface doesn't need to worry about anything else really. So he's kind of happy with that, and he goes back over to me, as in the login programmer, and says, no, I'm happy with that. I will start creating the login model for you, alright, based upon this login model interface. He says you need to use factory, you need to go to the factory to load it. Okay, he says you can't do it any other way, and you've got to then use get login instance to load the login instance. He says, is that agreed? Yes, it's agreed. Okay, we'll only go to the factory to load a login instance, and he says the factory will then have a get login model as well. All right, we're all agreed that you only need to do it this way. All right, so this is the one place that the call to get login is done. All right, good stuff. So everyone's agreed. Now we now need the model, which is the login.model, and we now need to implement this. So we need to copy all of these things here and put them in this model, just like so. And now we need to actually implement all of these. So once again, set user. Well, we need to know that then it's got a username, so we're going to say private and underscore username equals null, and this underscore username equals username get user. So we need to know that we've got a user object, so we've got user object equals null, and this needs to be of type standard class, which is fine. So get user, and then return this user object for the time being. Is user active? So we're going to need a variable for this. Okay, is user active. We'll set that to false in the beginning. We're going to return this is user active. Update last login. This is more like a doing one. So this one needs to actually return boolean. All right, so it's really going to need another. We're going to have another private function to actually do this, and we're going to say update last login, and we're going to do it like this, and we're going to change all this like this. Update last login. Quite simply because we don't want. We're having two methods, but we don't want anyone knowing actually how we've done it. So we're doing it in our own method, and we're going to return this update last login. Okay, that's how simple we're going to do it. Is that they know that this one method is there, so we're going to do it with a different method. All right. So for the time being, as far as we're concerned, is true. Okay, that's it. What we're doing is, because we don't have a database for the time being, we've just got to say it's true. Get error. Well, we need to know that we've got a private property of error equals null. Return this error has errors. Okay, so then we need another private variable here of num errors equals 0. Yep, and then return. Yeah, we can do this in one line. If this num errors is more than 0, then true, otherwise false. That's it. Okay, so we're kind of done for now. Get user. So we need to load the user. We need to check. This is really our starting point. Is user active, because that's the user. User must be set prior to calling this method. Okay, so if we can nail this first of all. Okay, if not this, or we'll say if this username is equal to null, then this dot num errors plus equals 1. This dot error equals username has not been set. Return false. Should be an active user within the database. Okay, so the user name must be set prior to calling this. User name should be an active user within the database. Okay, so we need to check if this username is equal to test1. Okay, that's what we need to test against at the moment. All right, is we don't need to care about anything else, because remember we said that we've got a test user, so we're just doing testing user is equal to test1. This dot is active user equals true. Else we can return false, because this will be false implicitly. All right. There we go. So that's that bit done. So get user, and if this dot is user, uh, remember, so we need to read this. The username must be set prior to calling this method. Alright? So potentially we're gonna set this once again. We kind of is equal to null, username has not been set. The username should be an active user within the database. If is user, and then we can set this user name is not an active user. So we need like a load method here. That's essentially what we need. Is we need a way of loading it, because get user, it's going to give some errors. Now is user is fine. Is user is fine. Let's think about this. Is that good enough? Now, if we're having to spend a lot of time thinking about it, then we're maybe not doing top down. Okay. So get user. That's what they right. This is the whole point of the contract, is that they didn't ask for a load or anything like that. They just asked for a get user, and they wanted a standard class back. So if this is user, if not this is user, return false. Well, we said that they wanted a standard class. Return new standard class. That's it. That's what we're going to do. So this user object equals new standard class. It's just an empty one. That's exactly what they wanted. Okay, well we need in here is a load function. This is what we want to replace with. So this is what we want to load. This is where we're going to do it. Okay, if load that goes in there. So we're going to come down here, make a private method, and we're going to say that this is load, and we want username, and inside of here we're going to have user objects equals null, and this is going to be type standard class for this user. So this is essentially where we're going to be saving the data. So if when we're loading it, if this username is equal to test, effectively this is showing that the user's there. Yeah, okay, we don't need to care about this. Else user is active, and this user, did I make two of them? User object, I did make two of them, yeah. Okay, so user object is there. Okay, new standard class, and this user object password equals password 1, user objects username equals test1, and user objects equals last login equals time minus, say, an hour ago. Yep. So we know that it's there. Okay. We change this to username because this is an internal method that doesn't care about what else has happened in the class. This is the one that's going to be loading it from the database. So user is active, and this user object is loaded, and we're going to return this. Okay, is user active? Because essentially, if it is true, then we know that it's a loaded user. Okay, and yeah, last login. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So this model is pretty much done. We can come back over to our login class and to know that is active. This is active. Set domain, set cookie expires, set cookie, get error, is active, executes. So this is where we are. Username, password, cookie domain, cookie expires, user exists, this username. So this is where we're coming. User exists first of all. Set username is there. Yep. Is user, the user exists equal true. Okay, it's fine. So we know that that's being used in the right way. And is user, yeah, that's loading. Yep. So essentially, get user. So up here, if this user active and is object, user object, then we can just return the user object straight away. Okay, because we know it's already loaded. Therefore, we don't need to load it once again. Fair enough. And this, to be honest with you, we're just going to ignore for now because we actually don't have a database anyway. And that pretty much that pretty much works for now. So we can hand over this model, and as we go on, we can work on things even more. All right. So that's that pretty much done. Now, essentially, to the point of being able to do this login part is kind of done, because we can come here, for example, and all we've got to do is require core factory.php, and we've got to say login equals factory get login instance, login set username, it's test1. Set password password1. Set domain, whoops, is then example.com. Sets cookie name, login, let's just call it login, sets cookie expires, time plus 360 for example. And is there anything else that we need to set? Password, cookie, no, we set everything. So now we can say if login, oh no, first of all, before we do this, we can say if yeah, no, it's correct, because we don't need to worry about whether they're logged in. If login is active, it's more if not active, then it goes there. So I came from. If not active, then we're asking. So someone would come. The call would be made to login first of all to see whether they're active, and if it's not active, then they need to go through the information. Else, user is already logged in. Execute remaining codes. And once these are all set, then all we've got to worry about now is execute. And if we read up upon what we wrote down for execute, okay, the method should execute the whole process. All other pieces of data such as a username, password, cookie name, expires, domain will be set prior to this method call. The method should return true or false, true based on the user being logged in successfully, false based on the user not being logged in successfully. If the user is not logged in successfully, we want to know that we can call getError to know the error which has occurred. So if not executes, then we got error equals login, or first of all we can say and login has errors. No, essentially not has errors, because has errors will return true if it has errors, but we want to know that it's not got errors, so it will return false. Okay, so that's why we're negating it. If we say has errors, then that will be true. We don't want it to have errors, so therefore we're saying and not has errors. Okay, then no, we want to say has errors. If not login, alright, so it was an unsuccessful login, and login has errors, then echo login get error, for example. Otherwise, user is logged in. It's as simple as that. That's basically where this is. There's a little bit more work that would need to be done on it, but basically we could spend hours upon hours upon hours explaining this. Now you should have got the idea behind this one here. You know, the stuff that needs to be done is a database, is a connection to the database through the model. How are you going to attach then the model to this? And I don't want to be creating databases in this example. I don't want to be creating entries. I don't want to be doing all this stuff, because that's stuff that you should know how to do already. Now maybe the logic behind this is that the model needs essentially a database connection, which would need another discussion about another interface. Okay, the interface would then need to be like a database interface or a MySQL interface to be able to know that that it's got something which it can load, which would essentially be here. This load should be able to then, because we want to know that the login model doesn't need to worry about connecting to a database. It just needs to do it. Okay. So essentially, I would then abstract that or delegate it to another class to be able to do it, because it's not something that you need to care about in this. You just want to be able to know that you can load a user. Now really it would be a user interface, okay, that you'd want to have in here. So you'd have a new instance of a new user loaded through the factory, and then you would check if the user exists, and if it does exist there, then that would then return the object or the user object and so on, which is then when you can do comparisons to passwords and so on. So I hope this one example of top-down programming logic gives you a flavour of what it is that you've got to do. Now I'm going to go away and have a think about what the next example can be, and then we'll go from there. It's all well and good me just doing one example, but now that you've got the idea, we'll take upon all the things that we've learned in these 6 videos, and then we need to find another thing to be able to utilize all of the things that we've learned and practice all of the things that we learned, so we can then not have any of these mistakes. Alright, so that's essentially it. Okay, I'm going to have a think about what the next one is. I hope that you've learned something, and I'll see you soon.